I saw some people making money on YouTube, and I wanted to go shoot guns and get the ammo paid for by a YouTube video.
Millions of people knew him as the face of Demolition Ranch. Matt Carriker was simply a young Texan with two passions that didn't seem like they belonged together. One involved saving lives. The other involved blowing things apart. For years, he somehow managed to balance both worlds, becoming a respected veterinarian while quietly building one of YouTube's most recognizable channels. But after more than a decade of explosive experiments, viral success, and an empire that seemed impossible to stop, something changed. Fans started noticing fewer uploads, different priorities, and subtle hints that the man behind the camera wasn't chasing the same dream anymore. Rumors spread everywhere. Had YouTube forced him out? Was controversy to blame? Had he simply lost interest? The truth turned out to be far more complicated and far more human than anyone expected. Matt's story began long before YouTube even existed. Growing up in Boerne, Texas, he spent much of his childhood surrounded by animals and the family veterinary practice. His father worked as a veterinarian, and from an early age Matt understood that caring for injured animals wasn't glamorous. It meant long hours, difficult decisions, and plenty of emotional moments. Watching that dedication left a lasting impression on him, and unlike many teenagers who constantly changed career goals, Matt stayed focused. His plan was simple: become a veterinarian and continue helping animals. That ambition led him to Texas A&M University, where he studied veterinary medicine. The workload was intense, requiring years of study, practical training, and countless exams. By all appearances, his future seemed completely mapped out. There was no sign he would eventually become one of the internet's biggest creators. In fact, if someone had predicted during those college years that millions of people would someday watch him fire rifles at impossible targets, few would have believed it. Yet another passion had always followed him throughout his life. Like many Texans, Matt had grown up around firearms. They weren't mysterious objects to him. They were simply part of everyday life. He enjoyed learning how different guns worked and loved experimenting with unusual ideas. That curiosity would eventually lead him toward something entirely unexpected. In 2011, almost as a hobby, Matt uploaded one of his first videos. There were no expensive cameras, no production crew, and certainly no grand business strategy. The videos were simple, genuine, and built around one basic question that fascinated viewers. What would happen if you shot this? The internet loved the answer. Instead of trying to imitate television or produce highly polished documentaries, Matt leaned into his natural personality. He laughed at mistakes, reacted honestly when experiments surprised him, and spoke to viewers like friends instead of an audience. Every upload felt unpredictable. Whether he was testing unusual targets or trying bizarre experiments that nobody else had attempted, people kept clicking because they genuinely didn't know what would happen next. As subscriber numbers climbed, Matt faced a dilemma many creators never experience. His YouTube channel was growing rapidly, but veterinary school demanded nearly all of his attention. One path offered instant excitement and growing internet fame. The other promised a stable career he had worked toward for years. Instead of abandoning his education to chase viral success, Matt made a decision that would define his character. He slowed down YouTube and concentrated on earning his veterinary degree first. Looking back, that choice revealed something important about him. Fame wasn't his foundation. It was an opportunity. His profession remained his priority. After graduating and becoming a licensed veterinarian, he finally had the freedom to return to YouTube with renewed energy. This time, Demolition Ranch wasn't just a side project anymore. It exploded. By the middle of the decade, the channel had become one of the most recognizable names in firearm entertainment. Viewers weren't coming for political debates or technical lectures. They came because Matt transformed simple curiosity into addictive entertainment. Could an unusual object stop a bullet? What happened when different calibers were tested against everyday items? Could seemingly impossible ideas actually work? Every video felt like a science experiment mixed with comedy. One of Matt's greatest strengths was understanding that personality mattered just as much as content. Plenty of creators owned impressive firearms, but very few could make audiences feel like they were spending an afternoon with an old friend. His relaxed humor made newcomers comfortable, while longtime firearm enthusiasts appreciated the creativity behind his experiments. As views climbed into the millions, opportunities appeared everywhere. Most YouTubers focused on growing one successful channel. Matt had a much bigger vision. He launched off the ranch, giving viewers a glimpse into his everyday life beyond explosive experiments. Instead of guns and targets, audiences watched family moments, home projects, business ventures, and behind-the-scenes updates. It revealed a completely different side of the man many only knew from Demolition Ranch. Then there was Vet Ranch, perhaps the most meaningful project he ever created. While Demolition Ranch entertained millions by destroying objects, Vet Ranch showed Matt doing exactly the opposite. Animals that had been abandoned, neglected, or considered beyond saving were given a second chance. Through surgeries, rehabilitation, and dedicated medical care, viewers watched heartbreaking stories transform into inspiring recoveries. The contrast couldn't have been greater. On one channel, explosions attracted millions of clicks. On another, compassion quietly changed lives. For many fans, Vet Ranch completely changed how they viewed Matt Carriker. He wasn't simply an internet personality with an interest in firearms. He was still the veterinarian he had always dreamed of becoming. The YouTube fame hadn't erased that part of his identity. It had simply given him new ways to help. Success continued expanding beyond videos. Matt built businesses connected to his growing audience, including merchandise operations that quickly grew far beyond ordinary YouTube merchandise. What started as shirts for fans gradually evolved into a much larger company serving multiple creators and brands. Employees were hired, warehouses filled, and responsibilities multiplied. Eventually came one of his biggest dreams: acquiring a massive Texas property that would become central to countless future videos. The ranch represented freedom. It offered endless space for creative projects, large-scale experiments, and ambitious ideas impossible to film almost anywhere else. To viewers, it looked like Matt was living the perfect life. Every upload seemed bigger than the last. Every project looked more ambitious. Every year appeared more successful. But behind the scenes, success was creating pressures invisible to the audience. Running one YouTube channel is demanding enough. Running several successful channels, multiple businesses, merchandise operations, veterinary projects, employees, properties, and a growing family at the same time is something entirely different. Every viral video raised expectations. Every successful project encouraged an even bigger one. The audience expected constant innovation because Matt had trained them to expect exactly that. The machine never stopped. What many fans didn't realize was that YouTube's success isn't measured only in subscriber counts. It's measured in deadlines, planning meetings, financial decisions, equipment maintenance, insurance, editing schedules, sponsor obligations, payroll, and the endless pressure to keep producing something larger than whatever came before. As Demolition Ranch became one of the platform's biggest names, it also became increasingly difficult to slow down. Millions of subscribers expected regular uploads. Businesses depended on continued attention. Employees relied on the company remaining successful. Even taking a short break became harder because the internet rarely waits for anyone. Yet despite all the growth, another part of Matt's life remained unchanged. At home, he was still a husband and father. Away from the cameras, his children weren't measuring success in subscriber milestones or viral videos. They simply wanted time with their dad. At first, balancing everything seemed possible. But as the years passed, the balance became increasingly difficult to maintain. Then life delivered a painful reminder that no amount of success could protect anyone from personal loss. The passing of Matt's brother deeply affected him. Losing someone who had shared childhood memories, family experiences, and life before internet fame forced him to see time differently. Achievements that once seemed incredibly important suddenly felt less significant compared to the moments spent with the people who mattered most. For viewers, the change wasn't immediately obvious. The videos still appeared. The humor remained. The experiments continued. But underneath the familiar entertainment, something had quietly begun shifting inside the man who built Demolition Ranch. The question was no longer how much bigger the channel could become. It was whether becoming even bigger was actually worth the price. And just as Matt found himself asking that difficult question, forces completely outside his control began pushing him toward the biggest decision of his entire career. As Demolition Ranch continued growing, the challenges surrounding it became impossible to ignore. The internet had changed dramatically since Matt uploaded his first videos back in 2011. What had once been a platform where creators could experiment freely had evolved into a place governed by constantly changing policies, stricter advertising standards, and algorithms that could dramatically affect a channel overnight. For creators whose content involved firearms, those changes carried even greater consequences. Year after year, YouTube introduced new restrictions that made gun-related content increasingly difficult to recommend and monetize. Videos that had once reached millions of viewers suddenly faced age restrictions or reduced visibility. Even when creators carefully followed safety guidelines, automated systems often struggled to distinguish educational or entertainment content from material advertisers considered risky. For Matt, this wasn't simply an inconvenience. Demolition Ranch had been built over more than a decade. Hundreds of videos, millions of subscribers, countless experiments, and an enormous community all depended on a platform whose rules were becoming more unpredictable. He rarely turned these frustrations into dramatic public battles. Instead, viewers noticed subtle adjustments. Certain types of experiments became less common. Uploads felt more carefully planned. It was clear that making the same videos which had built the channel years earlier was becoming increasingly complicated. Still, Matt adapted, like he always had. But YouTube wasn't the only thing changing. Away from the cameras, his priorities were evolving just as quickly. His children were getting older. Family vacations became harder to schedule around filming. Businesses required constant meetings. Employees depended on him for leadership. The larger his empire became, the more every single day filled with responsibilities that viewers never saw. Ironically, success had become its own burden. Millions of fans assumed Matt had complete freedom because he worked for himself. The reality was almost the opposite. Instead of answering to one employer, he now answered to multiple companies, business partners, employees, customers, sponsors, audiences, and the relentless demand for fresh content. Every upload represented far more than pressing a record button. There were locations to prepare, equipment to maintain, safety precautions to review, editing schedules to meet, business operations running behind the scenes. And once one video was finished, the next one immediately demanded attention. For years, Matt managed that pressure remarkably well. Then came a moment nobody could have predicted. In July 2024, the attempted assassination of Donald Trump dominated headlines around the world. As news footage spread across television and social media, internet users noticed something unexpected. The alleged shooter was wearing Demolition Ranch merchandise. Within minutes, Matt's brand had become connected to one of the biggest news stories of the year. Not because of anything he had said, not because of anything he had done, simply because someone he had never met happened to be wearing one of his shirts. It was the kind of situation every creator fears because there is no perfect response. Ignore it and people accuse you of staying silent. Address it and the story grows even larger. No matter what you say, someone twists your words. Matt quickly made it clear that he had absolutely no connection to the individual involved and strongly condemned violence. The message was direct, sincere, and left little room for misunderstanding. But the experience exposed something deeply unsettling. When you build a brand with millions of followers, you eventually lose control over where that brand appears. A logo printed on a shirt can travel anywhere, can show up in places you never intended. It can become associated with events you never imagined. For someone who had spent years trying to keep Demolition Ranch focused on entertainment rather than politics, it was an uncomfortable reminder that internet fame often comes with responsibilities no creator can fully control. Although many fans viewed the incident as completely unrelated to Matt himself, it added another layer of stress during a period when he was already questioning the future. Then came the conversations that mattered far more than YouTube analytics or news headlines. Those conversations happened at home. Matt and his wife Meredith looked at the life they had built together. On paper, it was an incredible success story. multiple thriving businesses, millions of loyal subscribers, financial security, a career most creators could only dream about. Yet one thing couldn't be purchased or expanded: time. Their children weren't going to stay young forever. The years that seemed endless when Demolition Ranch first launched had quietly disappeared. School events, family dinners, vacations, simple evenings together. Those moments don't pause while someone chases another viral video. And unlike subscriber counts, they can never be recovered once they're gone. For perhaps the first time in his YouTube career, Matt began asking a different question. Not, how do I grow the channel? But, what am I giving up to keep growing it? That question changed everything. Many creators leave YouTube only after audiences disappear. Others are forced out by controversy, burnout, or financial problems. Matt's situation looked very different. Demolition Ranch was still enormously popular. Fans still watched. Merchandise still sold. His reputation remained strong among the audience that had supported him for years. From the outside, there was no obvious reason to stop, which is exactly why his decision surprised so many people. When Matt eventually announced he was stepping away from the relentless pace that had defined Demolition Ranch for years, many viewers assumed something terrible had happened behind the scenes. Some believed YouTube had forced him out. Others blamed changing policies. Others pointed toward internet controversies. The truth wasn't nearly that simple. Instead, it was the result of years of small pressures slowly adding together. The changing platform, the emotional impact of losing family, the responsibilities of managing multiple businesses, the realization that childhood doesn't wait for anyone. Each factor alone might not have been enough. Together, they completely changed his perspective. One of the clearest signs that this wasn't merely a temporary break came when Matt decided to sell the Texas ranch that had become almost as famous as the channel itself. To longtime viewers, the property represented the heart of Demolition Ranch. It was where unforgettable experiments happened, where massive construction projects unfolded, where countless memories had been created over the years. Selling it wasn't simply a business transaction. It symbolized the closing of an entire chapter. Rather than trying to preserve every part of his old lifestyle, Matt appeared ready to simplify it. Less maintenance, less pressure, less obligation, more freedom. That choice revealed something many successful people eventually discover. Sometimes the hardest decision isn't building an empire. It's deciding how much of that empire you're willing to let go. Even as Demolition Ranch slowed, one project remained especially close to Matt's heart: Vet Ranch. Unlike explosive experiments that constantly demanded bigger ideas and larger budgets, helping injured animals never depended on chasing algorithms or going viral. Every rescued dog, every difficult surgery, and every successful recovery represented something lasting. Long before YouTube made him famous, Matt wanted to become a veterinarian. That dream never disappeared. In many ways, fame had simply taken him on a long detour before leading him back to the profession that first inspired him. That's one reason his story feels different from many internet success stories. He didn't abandon his original purpose. He rediscovered it. Today, Matt hasn't vanished from public life. He still connects with fans, manages businesses, and remains active in projects that matter to him. But the non-stop race to outdo every previous upload no longer defines his daily life. And perhaps that's the biggest surprise of all. People often assume success means constantly chasing more. More subscribers, more money, more views, more recognition. Matt Carriker reached a point where more stopped feeling meaningful. He had already built one of the largest firearm entertainment channels in YouTube history. He had earned millions of loyal followers. He had created businesses that extended far beyond online videos. There was very little left to prove. Instead of waiting until burnout, scandal, or declining popularity forced a difficult ending, he chose to step back while people still respected what he had built. That's an incredibly rare decision in today's creator economy. The internet usually encourages creators to keep going until they're exhausted. Matt chose something different. He protected his legacy before it needed saving. So what really happened to Demolition Ranch? It wasn't destroyed by YouTube. It wasn't ended by controversy. It wasn't brought down by financial failure. Instead, it reached a crossroads where the man behind the channel realized his greatest achievement wasn't another viral video. It was recognizing when enough was truly enough. The explosions may have slowed, and the upload schedule may never look the same again. But Matt Carriker's story isn't one of failure. It's the story of someone who achieved almost everything he set out to accomplish, then had the courage to walk away before success consumed the parts of life that mattered most. For millions of fans, Demolition Ranch will always be remembered for unforgettable experiments, outrageous challenges, and spectacular moments that helped define an era of YouTube. But perhaps the channel's greatest lesson came at the very end. Sometimes the strongest decision isn't knowing how to build something extraordinary. It's knowing exactly when to put it down.